We are super, 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 super. So I'm going to be your host today. My name is Peter Igaga. I want to welcome you to the first canvas. Now, the thing about the canvas is what Uganda Advertisers Association has done. We have brought a canvas to you which you can paint and put anything on it that is of value. But what we want is at the end of the day, when the canvas is done, it's something that is presentable, it's something that is great, it's something that adds value to you. So today, on the first canvas of this new year, the advertising year, we're going to be talking about a very itchy subject to a lot of people, and that is influencers. Now, the whole digital revolution is something that we do not know. And why do I say we do not know? It's because we are learning about it every day. There's nobody who has gone ahead and figured it out and come back to tell us this is what it should be. So, and it's evolving at a very high rate. Now, there's a huge push, especially thanks to COVID-19, for to engage in digital marketing. And one of the key elements of digital marketing is influencers. Now, I've heard in certain quarters that some people do not really understand who influencers are, what their job is, and what they do. Some people think that they're just popular people who are paid to be popular, and others think they're people who move brands. So by the end of today, we will definitely have a clear idea on how influential an influencer is supposed to be, and even if what the people we think are influencers actually are influencers. So to get the ball rolling, I'm going to introduce our panel. And first on our panel, I'm happy to call out Caroline Ampire from Uganda Breweries. Caroline, if you could just in 1 second unmute and say hi to our audience.
Hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here because influencers is a channel that we use very heavily at Uganda Breweries. So this is going to be a worthwhile discussion for sure.
All right, thanks a lot for that. Next on our panel is somebody who's known in quite a lot of circles and is known also a lot online, and that is Emeka. Emeka, can you say hi? On some quarters, he's actually known as the romantic Muchiga. I don't know of any Bachiga who are romantic, but hey, he claims, but Henry, you know what? That's his claim to fame. I'm not going to rain on his parade. Emeka, you can kindly say hi to us.
Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure speaking to you all. But Peter, about the romantic Muchiga thing, I am the only one who has ever existed, and I'm trying to break the Bachiga generational curse of not being romantic. So I'm the first and last of my generation. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And last but not least, we do have Natasha, who is here with us. She will be representing the agency side. So Natasha, you're welcome. You can please unmute and say a big hi to us.
First of all, hi everyone, and thank you for joining this discussion. It's going to be a very interesting one, coming from the agency side and see what other people and hear what other people have to say.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot for that. So I'm just going to jump straight into it, and I'll start with Caroline. Now, Caroline, from a client's perspective, who is an influencer to you? If you could just be able to break that down.
Okay, first. All right. I would say, broadly speaking, an influencer is someone who has an audience and a brand of their own, where they communicate, engage with the audience, create some form of content that is very, very sort of targeted to what their specific audience is. And ultimately, they exercise some form of influence, whether it is inspiring you to make a decision or teaching you something new. So from a client's perspective, that's what an influencer is. I would also go ahead to say that in terms of the role they play within the entire digital strategy, Specifically for UBL now, it's that they sort of translate what the brand is to their audience. And then they also support with a content gap. So, they have these skills that they use to create content, and the brand would like to tap into that. So tap into their audience, tap into their brand, and tap into their content. Yeah.
Okay, but bearing all that in mind, that's heavy. And there's no school of influencing per se.
No.
A lot of this is just learned on the go. I mean, from a client's perspective, how do you take out who is a mufere and who is like the real deal?
Let me tell you, Peter, we've had to learn so many lessons, especially early on. I would say 2015, 2016, when we were just experimenting with this channel. A lot of lessons were learned, but I think for us, first and foremost, it's the brand feed. So if we look at your audience and the content you create and the messages you put out, do they resonate with what we define ourselves as the brand? And then from there, then it's influencer on influencer. It's not like there's a batch. You review one by one, and we'll see if the quality of your content is up to standard for us, or if even you fit certain mandatories that we have, because we sell alcohol, so there's certain things that we have to check off, like that your audience, is it above a certain age? But in terms of saying who's a mufere and who isn't, it's all in the results, really. If we're committed to do specific things and you have delivered, then by all means you are not a mufere and you're walking the talk. So it's mostly in the results.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, Natasha, the agency is usually charged with the responsibility of recruiting influencers where digital campaigns are concerned. And by default, when it works, fantastic. The client is happy. In fact, the client takes all the glory. When it doesn't work, it becomes an agency problem. Now, based off just shooting off what Carol has mentioned, can we then say that there's a difference between an influencer and somebody who just has a huge following?
Yeah, there is definitely a huge difference, because from our perspective, influencing comes from a certain level of trust in which your audience has with you, and knowledge and experience and authenticity. So when people trust your opinion, they will listen to you and they will engage with you. That's why you find people who have just 500 followers have a high rate of engagement compared to people who have 10,000, 50,000, And then also when someone who influences speaks from a perspective of knowledge, from the experience they've had. So it's probably something that they've experienced with a brand, they like it, then they go tweet, love this brand, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. And that's from an authentic perspective. So yes, there is a huge difference between someone who just has numbers, or for lack of a better term, is a one-hit wonder with their content, and someone who's actually an influencer.
So, Emeka, I'm not going to ask you if you are a one-hit wonder or an influencer, but I'd like to know, do we have, especially in Uganda, influencers who, first of all, decide that they are going to be influencers? Or do we just have accidental influencers? All of a sudden, you're talking a lot on social media, other people even buy followers, then boom, you've got people who are following you. You're not even aware of the nature or quality or age or anything about your followers. But hey, I've got 150,000 followers, so I'm popular. Then that qualifies me to be an influencer. Your thoughts?
Well, Peter, there's a group of these people who think that when you get to a certain number of followers, you've automatically become an influencer. I used to be one of those people. When I was starting to gain numbers on Twitter, I would see guys doing gigs, but I really would not know what it would take to come up with content and really influence for something. Not until I had to seek knowledge from the best people I knew in the digital marketing space. So there are people who believe that when they get to 10,000 followers, they've already become influencers, which is wrong. Now, these are the kind of people you find that their content is mostly sexual. They post a lot of sexual stuff and they want to gain followers. And once they get to 10K, they're like, oh, I'm now an influencer, Mompeku gig. That is wrong. For one to become an influencer, you need to know the market. You need to know your niche. You need to know what you are talking about. We have these one-hit wonders. He goes, makes just one tweet and it will blow up. And he thinks that that is what is going to always happen, which is wrong. That's where they get it wrong. But for an influencer, you have to sit down, study the product you are going to be influencing for, make research, and go on and post, other than being a one-hit wonder. Those are my thoughts.
Now, you've talked about something which is very key, and clearly it's a thorn in the flesh for a lot of clients. And I'm just going to call on Natasha there to just pull it out. There's this thing called content. Now, is it my job as an influencer to create content, or is it the job of the agency? Because the agency ideally should know what the client wants to figure that bit out and just give it to me to pump out.
Okay, let me just give an example of someone I have worked with. Yeah. So if as the agency we onboard or we suggest a certain influencer content creator for the brand, it is our job to be the link between the two. So what we do is we brief the influencer depending on what kind of content they create. If you are the type of person who just tweets, then that's what we're going to brief you on. If you're the type who creates videos or audio, that's how we're going to brief you. We'll tell you, we need you to create this video about XYZ, and this is what you need to say, this is what you don't need to say, and stuff like that. So it's really the link, it's really the link between the agency, the type of content the person is producing, and what the brand wants. So yes, sometimes we do brief them, sometimes we give them word for word, and other times we just let them be as authentic as they can. So because in our experience, when they create from a point of authenticity, that content goes far and wide. But when it's a bit more scripted, that's when the results are really poor.
Yeah, okay. You see, the whole thing about content is a gray area. And I've actually heard a number of influencers saying, hey, but you know what? You know your brand better. Tell me what you want to do. Come up with the content. Carol, do you think it is unfair to expect an influencer to come up with content and deliver that content and just literally throw them in there and say, look, you're the influencer, you deliver? Your thoughts?
No. It's not unfair. It's so, just to speak to what Natasha was talking about, it is what is the role of this particular influencer? Because one, not all of them are creators. So even as the brand, even as the agency, you have to segment. Like if I have an overall influencer strategy, then these are my creators. Let's say I have 10 creators, I have 50 amplifiers, I have 5 key opinion leaders. They all serve different purposes. So if you're being contracted as a content creator, then that is what you do by all means. And it is up to you to, get the key talking points from the client for that particular campaign and say them in your own story. I absolutely do not agree with agencies creating content for influencers, because then it loses authenticity, right? It doesn't have that touch, that flair, that rawness, because now it's overproduced. So then the audience feels there's a bit of distance because it's so shiny and you're wearing these designer clothes and stuff like that. So we really, really have to segment what the role of the different influencers are and how they contribute to your strategy, and then hold them accountable for that. But in terms of creating content, if I had to give it a split, I would say ultimately the influencers have to do 70% of the work. Then agency can support with 30%. Maybe it is providing a space where they can shoot, or supporting with some equipment, but they're not going to do the idea for you and then script it and then shoot it for you. That should absolutely be unacceptable, because then what is your role as an influencer? Are you just going to post? No, that shouldn't be it. Yeah.
Now, Emeka, again, just in the same direction that our discussion is taking, when it comes to content, I've heard in certain circles, influencers, people complaining that, you know what, with these guys, once you start with them, it's okay, then all they do is just post. It's like the creativity goes. But then you hear the influencers saying, okay, but you know what, I did not get a clear brief. Now, can you blame the influencer for starting an engagement without getting a clear brief, or do you blame the client and the agency for not giving clarity on what the expectations are?
It's a two-way thing, Peter. First of all, it's the influencers at times to blame. There are those influencers who just get onto a gig and they think it's just going to be all about tweeting. You're going to be tweeting whatever they tell you. No. What the client and the agency does, they will give you a brief of what you're supposed to do. So it's upon you, it is upon your creativity to come up and create content. Then the other blame goes to the agencies and clients most times. Actually, a lot of times. They will give you a small brief, and they expect you to use that small brief to create a lot of content. It is an issue that I have faced before with some agency. We were working on something, and we told them, hey, talk to the client, tell them to give us a clear brief. You get, because as on that gig with a lot of people, and all of us were complaining. So most times it's the client and the agency to blame, because the agency at times does its very best, but let down by the client. Currently, I'm on a gig under some agency, but let me tell you something, Peter. The client is very, very disorganized, because first of all, they gave us a brief on what to do. Now, after giving us the brief on what they wanted us to do, we read everything. We even read the contract, and the end product was, hey, these guys were trying to exploit us. So we're like, hey, guys, no, I can't do this for this amount of money. The amount of money you're paying me is very little. So we want a clear brief of what we are going to do. And guess what? Up to now, the client hasn't given us a proper or clear brief of what you're supposed to do, but they are demanding the agency for content. So most times it's a two-way thing. But there are also influencers who go in, who go out of their way and do more than the client has provided. That is what I can say. Most influencers who really, really have passion for the game, they'll go out of their way and do more than the client has provided. But also this should not make the client and the agency sit back and relax and exploit us. No, that is not it. Give us a clear brief. Tell us, we want you to do this. It's upon us, upon our creativity to come up with content. But most times the agencies, actually the clients, are not clear. They are really, really not clear.
Okay, I'll tell you, the brief is where either is actually the make or break point. And unfortunately, generally across the board, that's one of the most underlooked aspects of any campaign. But just on the side to mention, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a disorganized client, because it's the job of the agency to organize the client. That's why the agency is there. Because the reality is communication is usually not the core business of the client. And that's why they hire an agency to handle it from them. So when we talk about the brief, and Natasha, you're representing all the agencies, including Grindstone, I want you to now stand up for us. The brief. Where do things get lost in translation? And then, because that's where a lot of fights happen. The brief possibly is not clear. the influencer understands something different, the client meant something different, and then boom, it explodes and there are fireworks all over the place. So where do we get lost in translation, and how can we make sure things do not get lost in translation?
I think that's obviously bound to happen at one point or the other. I can't deny that, but sometimes it would be, okay, let me just give a situation. Let's say a product is launching and then there's not much, there's not much on what needs to be done or the nitty-gritty of that product and that launch or that campaign, So we brief ahead of time, but I think what we need to start doing is briefing over a certain period of time. So if a campaign is launching in the next 2 months, we need to start briefing earlier. So if there's anything to change, if there are questions to be asked, if something just basically needs to be changed or something needs to be added, that can all be eliminated and talked about and discussed so that when we get to the campaign launch, we're all on the same boat. I think it's just a matter of time because sometimes let's say someone could launch, say they're launching this Saturday and it's Wednesday. There's not enough time for this content creator to shoot the video and to the client's liking because, there's a lot of back and forth with approvals. They could say, no, he didn't really bring out the element of our colors are blue and red that much as we'd wanted him to. So I have to go back to the content creator and say, you know what, could you just repeat this video with the same clothes and the same, light settings and just say this and amplify it a bit more. So there the content creator gets a bit discouraged. So I think with the way that it has to be over a period of time, ample time for both the agency and both the client and the influencers, that when everyone is in agreement. And I think in the future, we need to have sit-down meetings with everyone, so that when we leave the room, we're all aligned on what needs to be done, so that the content creator can come and I think, okay, with other markets, I've seen content creators come up with a whole mood board before they actually start shooting the content. So let's say Emeka comes up with a mood board. He says, this is what I'm going to talk about. There are going to be 2 scenes, one at night, one daytime. What do you think? This is what I'm going to amplify during the daytime shot, and this is what I'm going to amplify during the nighttime shoot. So I think with everyone involved, the agencies and the clients should have ample time for briefing the content creators, and the content creators should also come up with mood boards. So that way, when you can't just say, oh, I've shot this video and that's it, I'm done. And then you start losing morale when you correct it here and there. So that's just my opinion.
So, Carol, based on that, can we then say that sometimes the client doesn't know what they want? Because I've often heard that. Like, you see people complaining, saying, oh, but man, that client doesn't know what they want. Is it that the client doesn't know what they want, or the client is just not understood?
I think the clients know what they want. At least, from the brand teams that I work with, they're very, very clear on the objective. They might not communicate it in a way that makes sense to everyone or is very, very clear. Because, sometimes the feedback is very subjective. Someone will say, I don't feel it, the vibe is not coming through, stuff like that. But I think the clients know what they want. And I think something that helps, even with the agency-client relationship, is if we have a process for launching campaigns, and we follow this process. Sometimes it doesn't happen, and like Natasha said, it's usually due to time constraints, where you find that some things are falling off on the wayside because we're in a hurry. But I think ultimately the client knows what they want. And I put this on the chat. Sometimes the campaign evolves midway, where you're running a campaign and you learn something new, and now you have to change, and you have to ask the influencers to adapt. And they've planned their content, they've paced it out, and now you're telling them, no, bring this forward, ramp up the number of posts you're putting up because this is the pressure that we have. It happens. But ultimately, the objectives are usually very clear. If we have this campaign and we're using 50 influencers, then this is the reach we're hoping to get, this is the average engagement we're hoping to get, it's usually very clear, at least from my experience.
Okay, so can we then say in short that versatility is important, that all parties need to be in that space where, I mean, we cannot just say this is the script and this is what we're going to stick to. I mean, we should be open to changes.
Absolutely. And Natasha talked about a mood board, and I like that. And even in practice, at least for UBL, it's something that we're starting to do, where even before the influencers create content, we together with our agency, we will look at where they're focusing on and approve that. And once that is approved, then honestly, if we come back to you and ask you to change, then you're at liberty to say, but guys, we discussed this, we approved it. So versatility is really, really important. But even then, we have to be cognizant of, the things that go into changing. So, costs. If I have to reshoot a video, then that's my time. It's resources. So there should be limits, but yeah, I implore everyone to be versatile, especially in our industry, because things do change.
Emeka, now it's very easy as an influencer to be picked by either a client or an agency. So, and they say, look, we've seen you, we do this, can you come and work for us? But are influencers going out there and selling themselves and saying, hey, you know what, I am Peter, I target, for example, people who eat Weetabix, okay, and this is my following, I have a clear portfolio, and basically look professional? Because my opinion is there's a lot of, it's a very gray area, such that if we are not picked as an influencer, it's all right, life goes on. But I'm sure somebody's going to pick me because of the number of followers. Your thoughts?
Well, a few influencers have done that. A few influencers have actually sold themselves like you have described. Then the others, what they do is they work to finish. They tweet and they're like, let me just tweet. After all, my money is going to be paid. No. So the best thing to do is what you describe, like create content, sell yourself, and you'll always be picked, because I believe there are agencies that pick influencers according to what they bring on table, according to how they structure their content, according to how they work. You get, and there are also agencies which pick influencers just because they have a huge following. Now, if you pick an influencer just because they have a following and on their bio they have influencer, they will just work to finish. That is it. And then there's something Natasha was talking about. There's something Natasha was talking about of let's say most times a content creator has put up content, then the client approves, but they're like, no, let them make changes. I face those challenges a lot. And Natasha, you know what I'm talking about. You create, because my niche is videos. I create funny videos talking about a brand. So you create a video, and guess what? The client is supposed to approve the video, but you've sent in a video on Wednesday. The content is supposed to be up and running on, let's say, Friday or Saturday, because what you're pushing is happening over the weekend. You send a video in on Wednesday and the client approves on Friday. But before the approval, at times they send you feedback. They're like, hey, he must change this, he must change that, he must change that. What have you been doing between Wednesday when I sent the video, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? At times they approve on Saturday. What have you been doing between that period? Because first of all, content creators, we have a lot of things we do. So once you quickly want something, first of all, my mood is down. My mood has gone. You get, I am not into it. So I'll have to look for a vibe to come up with more content and spice it up. So agencies and clients have to work on that bit because it is really tiring. At times I get to a point and I'm like, no. Let me just give up this stuff. Let me just give up this shit because, man, it is so hectic on me. And that is one major thing clients have to work on. Because at times you ask the agent, you ask a person working in the agency, hey, what's up? Time is going. The thing is supposed to be up and running on Saturday because let's say the match is happening on Sunday or Saturday, and by Friday afternoon, Friday evening, no approval has come. Now that is one thing that pisses off content creators.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Can we then say that influencers and content creators are selfish? And I'll tell you why. Because you see, you asked a very interesting question. You say, as content creators and influencers, you're very busy. But what is the client doing? Could it be that the client is also busy? That's why the approval has delayed.
Peter, there's being busy, but there's being busy. At least delegate someone to help out. I have sent you my work. You have to work on it and approve it. It's not about selfishness. It's not that we are selfish. No, we need, because the moment you approve something on time, Peter, it is going to give me time to also think about something new to incorporate. It's going to give me time to be like, okay, the client has told me to change this. Yes, it's going to give me more time. And I'll sit down and think of what else to do other than you giving me feedback at night, yet the thing is supposed to be up and running. And when I send back another video, you take long to approve. Man, okay, the client might be busy, but at least consider. You have to consider. Because at times we speak to people. No, I speak to people in the agency. I'm like, hey guys, what's up? And their responses are like, man, nange vako. You get? Natasha can bear me witness.
I think you should just leave me out of that one. Yeah,
So,
I suggest.
I'm going to call on Carol. I mean, because from what Emeka is saying, the bottleneck comes from the client side. And then if there are delays and then the outputs are not met and the objectives, the gun is turned around and the client does not take responsibility. So is it just that clients are either too busy or they're unbothered? What is the issue?
I mean, I don't know what the issue is, but these things do happen actually, where you had let's say, a content calendar from the influencer sitting in your inbox for a week and it hasn't been approved. It does happen. I think that the thing about that happening is, as a client, you have to be cognizant of the fact that you approved this late and it's affecting the whole entire process. And I'm going to call on you, don't get tired of making those calls. Don't get tired of stressing the agencies, because it's not, I can't say it's one thing or the other why these approvals are late or not. It's a factor of things, and it's also dependent on the client themselves. But please push and make sure that as part of your process, you get the approvals. And if they do come late, please call it out. Call it out in a formal channel so that it's there for everyone to see that this video is going up late. It's going to have a few impressions because of the time that it's going to be up for leading up to the event. But even clients know when the approval comes late, they know what they've done, and ideally they should take responsibility for it.
Okay, so now Natasha, I know you ducked under the radar and you said, and Sharon, don't worry, we're going to be coming to you. We're going to have our Q&A in the next 5 minutes. But Natasha, as the agency is the buffer between the client and the influencer in this case. Shouldn't it be the work of the agency to manage the client? And also the same way the agency is managing the influencer, such that you learn your client. You know, if your client is slow with approvals and that kind of thing, shouldn't you be able to pace your engagement with influencers so that you manage such delays and don't get rubbing either the influencer off the wrong way or the client off the wrong way?
Yeah, that does happen. And in situations that might be familiar to Emeka's, a lot happens in an office, like Caroline has mentioned. Like the process of approval could go from just the agency to the creative director, from the creative director straight to the client, from the client to the PR team so that they can see if that's legible for approval, and then it goes to the global office or the multinational office or where the hub of Africa is for some clients. So you could find that's what delays the process. And even if you keep pushing from your end and you get that last minute approval, sometimes it's the processes that happen within an organization that cannot change. But with that being said, yes, it's better to work smart as a content creator, because if that's consistently happening, you know how to work around the client. You say, oh, because these guys are going to approve this late, let me just cross-check with the KPIs I was given or the brief that I was given and try to make sure I take off everything and then give 2 options. That way, okay, with advertising, we always learn that you can never just go with one option. And it may be tasking, but in the end, you find it saves you a lot of time and headaches and that frustration that you get from late approvals. But it's something that needs to also change. And sometimes with certain clients, yes, when we're showing them the reports and telling them why this content creator didn't do well, because there was the time frame of approval was a bit too short and too slim, and when they put up their work, they got little engagement. But with working with some influencers, when that happens, obviously, there's going to be a brand post or a brand video, an official brand post or brand video. They go under those comments and they start engaging with the people who are responding, like the audiences who are responding. And that's what helps them also get a bit more impressions and reach when it comes to their personal content. And also sometimes with these content creators, it's not a matter of just posting up something that's late. You can also decide to go on your stories. Yeah, like let's say if you're using Instagram and you've posted the video, you can go on your Instagram stories and direct people to that post. You can still push on your other avenues and platforms for that post to get a bit more engagement on it. So I think that's like kind of a solution to Emeka's problem. You can correct me, Emeka.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, guys, there's an old English saying that says time flies when you're having fun. But now it's time for us to open up the Q&A, because I've even seen Sharon has been itching, her hand has been up there. But just before we get to that, Emeka, piece of advice. I need just 2 quick points from you as to what you would advise influencers and potential upcoming influencers to look out for so that they can become influencers who make money from influence.
Well, the advice I can give them is, first of all, you need to get your niche. You need to get something you can specialize in very well. For example, you can decide and say that I'm always going to be, I'm going to specialize, let's say in beverages, I'm going to specialize in something else. Or you can say that, hey, my content is going to be video based, and you can create your niche there. Because I've also discovered my niche there and it has worked for me. It has worked for a couple of friends, Uncle Mo, you get. So you need to create a niche. Then secondly, when you get a gig, do not just tweet or do not just post because you want the client or the agency to see that you're doing something. No, go out of your way, be creative, and do not work to finish. Just work to, should I say work to impress, or work for your next client? That is what I say. Because most times when I'm emceeing, I do not MC for my current client. No, I MC for my next client, because my next client is watching and they'll be like, okay, I want that person. So also, when you are doing a gig, do it for your next client or do it for your current client such that they can get you another gig. Do not just work to finish. Tomalaga kula. Thank you.
Thanks, but I hope you know that that's a very Ugandan way of doing things. And a lot of things that we do. It's all about today. Forget about tomorrow. Carol, two things that you would let us know that a client looks out for when picking an influencer.
The first is brand fit. So are you aligned with my brand? And this is something speaking to what you've just asked, Emeka, all influencers should be able to build a brand. What is their brand? What is their niche? So that the different brands that want to work with them can sort of align. So that's one. Then also put in effort, like guys, put in effort, find a way to translate what the client is trying to communicate to your audience. Earlier I put it on the chat. I don't want influencers posting event posters because the brand can do that on their own just fine, right? So if you're pushing an event for me, how are you going to communicate it to your audience in a way that the brand wouldn't be able to do it? So those are my two things. But before I relinquish the floor, I want us to have a provocation, because ultimately this discussion was, do Ugandan influencers have any influence? And I would say yes, but how do we attribute their success to them? So sometimes it's indirect, and again, this is also an onus on the influencers to showcase themselves. If you get any feedback in your inbox that says, I tried out this restaurant that was really good, please take a screenshot, send it to the client. That's the kind of stuff we want to see. And sometimes we don't have visibility of that. You're going to give me a report that says, you told me to do 21 tweets, I did 26. You told me to reach this number of people, I reached them. But showcase other things that you're getting that show that you have some sort of influence, because especially in the industry that we're operating, it's very, very difficult to attribute that to you. It's not like there's a direct, path to purchase. If you compare it to, countries like Nigeria or Egypt, where there's a lot of e-commerce and people can easily click on a link, and then we know this was Caroline's link, people clicked on it. But you do have influence. Just help the client understand where your influence lies. Showcase yourselves. Yeah.
Oh,
Right,
Peter.
Yes.
There's something I want to talk about agencies. Now, most times they will tell you to do something, and at times they want you. Then in the middle, they see you do some other thing for another brand. Then they want you to do the same thing for them, yet it was not listed in your contract. Now, that is a mistake most agencies do. Now, I will give an example for some beverage company. I was influencing for them and I was doing a great job. Now, there is a pay TV company I'm not going to mention. I do a very great job for them. Now, I do videos, and this beverage company was like, the client has seen the work you're doing for these guys. They want you to do it. But I told them, guys, it has not been, it was not listed in my contract. I can't do something that is not in my contract as per now. And because these guys pay me for video, so are you guys ready to pay me for video? Like, no, what about the money we are giving you? I told them, excuse me, we shall have to go back and revise the contract, and you guys add money. So I must say this agency got pissed. They did. And I told them, maybe after this contract is done, in the next contract, if you guys offer me a new contract and you add more money per video, I will be giving you videos also. Boom. They did not. Now, most agencies and clients want to exploit us. One thing we cannot work with. Then another thing, that same agency, when payment came through, they wanted their cut and I refused. Then they canceled my contract. Okay, they did not renew my contract. So recently I was talking to the client, that the client called me directly, and they're like, hey, I'm from such and such a company. You were doing this for us, for this beverage. What happened? I'm like, I also don't know what happened. You guys didn't give me a new contract. Like, no, we told the agency to onboard you, and we were so shocked that you were not onboarded. So I explained to them what these guys did, and they're like, yeah, no, it's okay. We shall handle you directly. So that is, the agencies need to work on that. Thank you.
Okay. Very, very passionate words. So Natasha, just as we get into the Q&A session, I'm not going to ask you for two things, which just want to ask. Are our influencers undervalued? Or have they undervalued themselves?
I think the right way to answer that from my perspective is as an influencer, and as someone who manages influencers, the way you present yourself and the way you present the work that you've done determines your next contract with either the brand or the agency. So let's say if I have Emeka on as an influencer, this is just a hypothetical situation. And he sends me a report of what he's done, and he's putting it in a Word document, and it's not in a professional manner. It's because, and he's delivering that report very late, there are grammatical mistakes and all that stuff. I'm not going to probably work with him the next time, or if I've asked him to make changes and make it more elaborate, I'm just seeing that this person is with them. So I think what I'd say is, as an influencer, I think it's important to, one, create your portfolio of the work that you've done for the brand or other brands. Put it, just make it doesn't have to be the prettiest thing that you've done, how you did it, your numbers, and what value you can add to that brand, so that they can say, okay, because this person has 500,000 impressions based off of organic content, they engage personally after posting on the brand's pages, and kind of value adding. But if you tell me that my name is Tom, influencers or content creators present their work before and after really depends on how much they're valued.
All right. No, Sharon, tell us who you're directing it to. And then we'll come to Maureen.
Morning.
Morning to you.
Morning. Yeah. Wow, it's been so much. I think I've even forgotten what I was going to ask. But I think it's to Emeka. I've seen like several brands hire influencers, and obviously someone is supposed to influence, say, pens, and I don't know if they're not given chance to use the pens or just to told about the pens, given free pens, and then you find the person using or likes pencils, and publicly or secretly around everyone knows they use pencils. So, and then later obviously it comes to backfire. So I don't know if it's an issue of once people give you the attention, you just take anything. I think somebody spoke about the whole niche thing, but I think also it's the attention that people get, and then they don't exactly know what they want. So then they end up taking anything, and yet then they figure themselves out. Then it's like, it's a bit brand, it tarnishes their brand or something. So I don't know if you can just speak about that, or just on how to help people. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that question. It's actually a nice question. Now, if you are influencing, let's say for pens, and in public you're using pencils, or you are using a different brand of pen other than the one you're influencing for, then you're not supposed to call yourself an influencer. To get. Then also, I believe this is to me because according to the people I have worked with, the client or the agency is supposed to provide the influencer with the product. to use. You get? Because most times influencers are not going to go and start buying the product. No, you are supposed to provide them with the product such that next time, so that when they are using it, it can be visible. Working for a beverage company, and there are companies you work for, and hey, they expect you to buy that particular beer using your own money. No, you're supposed to provide the product to us such that we can also get a feel, we can get a taste of what we are influencing for.
Okay. Just by and large, I think it's also should be part of the terms of engagement. So it's how you engage, because possibly you could be given cash to go and buy, but of course experiencing the brand makes sense, because if you're talking about and trying to influence people, you should also have a first-hand experience of both the positives and the negatives of that brand. All right, Maureen, your question and to whom you're sending it to.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. My name is Maureen Andinda, and I wanted to weigh in on the conversation from the perspective of a consumer who interacts with content that comes both from clients and from influencers. One of the things that from a consumer perspective, I think is severely lacking in the role of influencers is, do you actually get me to buy? Do you get me to consume? Do you get me to come for the event? And I think that for a lot of the metrics that are set for influencers here, that conversation is one that is seen as something that is really, is a hard ask, and a lot of influencers are not willing to push to push to that extra mile. And so a lot of the times we then see content that is regurgitated. You're posting the artwork that the client has posted. I already saw it on the client's page. You are telling us that day, time, and event, and location where the event is going to happen. Okay, why should I come? I think that is the value that the influencer adds to this whole ecosystem. The other thing that I'm thinking about is, on this particular conversation, there's three layers. There's three points of decision making that's going on. You have the client, you have the agency, and then you have the influencer. In systems where those levels are there, it's going to be very difficult to do away with bureaucratic challenges. And so for somebody, and this goes to a conversation around, approvals, giving feedback, how often do you come back to the influencer and give them feedback on the content that they are producing? One of the things that I have observed just looking at content that goes out on Twitter from some of the influencers is there is the perception that brands and agencies need the influencers more than the influencers need the brands and the agencies. You see it a lot of the times when maybe there's challenges that have to do with payment or feedback, and the first thing an influencer would do is immediately call them out on Twitter because they can, right? Cancel these people. They don't stick to what they've done without having that acknowledgement that there's bureaucratic processes, there's levels of approval that, to no one's fault, take time. Things just take time. And if you're going to work with brands or with companies or with organizations for whom there's different levels of approval, there's only so much that you can do within a specific amount of time. And so for me, one of the things I would really like to hear from this conversation, and this is a question that's going to any one of the speakers on the panel today, is how do you work together to tease out the aspect of better communication of value of whatever it is that is being advertised to us as the consumer? Because the conversation on influence for me makes more sense if I see maybe a movie recommendation from someone who watched it, whose opinion I value. It's more likely I'm going to watch that. If this is just an influencer who one day they're talking about one thing that has completely nothing to do with the brand that they're influencing for today, it's highly unlikely I'm going to take your word for it, because we all know, and we see it every day even on the timeline, if I just like, oh yeah, little gig, that person is on a gig. So you're getting your paper, but are you convincing me as a consumer that there's actual value in the product or service that you're pushing? Thank you so much for the opportunity to contribute.
Okay. Before we go to Joy, anybody want to take that up? Carol?
No, absolutely, and I agree with everything Maureen has said. Which also brings me back to my point, industry-wide and also even within the influencers, how do we showcase your influence? How do we attribute certain successes to you? And it's a provocation. It's not like I have the answers or anything, but it's something we can certainly think about. Because before I did this panel, I was actually on the fence, because from a business perspective, it's hard to say that influencers have influence, but I did speak to a bunch of consumers, and it was a resounding yes. Actually, I spoke to about 33 consumers, and 64% said yes, they've been influenced by someone to do something, either to buy a product or check out a space or go to an event. But how do we attribute that to this particular influencer if it's not coming from the consumers? It's something to think about. I don't necessarily have the answers, but I think it was a good provocation as well, Maureen.
Cool. Thanks a lot for that. Joy, you have a question? Joy, you can.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Kindly go ahead.
Good morning. I joined, I think, 30 minutes into this conversation because I didn't know what's happening, but I'm glad I'm here. I caught a bit of some of the things Emeka was saying, and I agree with him about most of the things. So I've also been an influencer, I think, for the last 3 years. But as I grew into the business, mine is not really a question, but just things we should think about. Because I have been on the side where I'm the influencer, and I've also been on the side where I'm managing influencers. And now as a business owner and a coach for small business owners, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done with influencers, because first of all, how we all got into the influencer marketing work. I mean, most of us just found ourselves there. So when I started learning about social media and digital marketing, I found that actually most of us didn't know what we're actually doing. Most people, when they, get their first 30K, their first 50K, and they start getting called to gigs and, hey, come, just make a tweet, you're going to get paid, and that's it. So most people believe as long as you have the numbers, then you're an influencer, which is actually not right. I've studied more Instagram influencers, and I have seen there are people who have 2,000 followers, 1,000 followers, and actually make more money compared to people who have 50,000 followers on Twitter. So I think the thing is, the way we define an influencer in Uganda is still very shallow, because most influencers we have on Twitter, basically, because that's where influencer marketing is strong in Uganda, they don't even have a defined niche. And I speak because I know, because I was there. I used to work for Club, then I was working for UTB, then I was working for SRHR. So there's still that confusion. People do not understand that actually make a living out of being an influencer and creating content, you need to have to build an audience where people are going to believe you. Because I understand that if I'm talking about pads today, and then I talk about alcohol tomorrow, and then I talk about fitness the other day, if someone is interested in fitness and then I talk about pads, then I'm probably going to lose them, in that conversation. So we need to understand where we belong. Most people still haven't figured out their niche. And for me, after I learned that, it has really helped me a lot, because I have 20,000 followers on Twitter, but I see people who have 100,000, and I've made good deals from international brands after I niched and decided that I wanted to do social media and marketing as my niche, because it helps to understand what your audience needs and where you actually belong, and something that you actually love. So I believe if people can understand what they want to do, with the following the build, if they can find something that they're passionate about, then it could really help the sector grow, because the more you niche down, or the more you get a segmented audience, then you have higher chances of making money. Because if you speak to an audience, they will believe you if you have that one thing that constantly talk about. Then the other thing, most influencers, they really just come to events because they're just there to create the content, make 50 tweets and go. Like, the effort is not really there. Like, that's just it. But I think this has been a great discussion, but I still believe it's just the beginning. It's the tip of the iceberg. There's really so much that needs to be tackled if we are going to help influencers actually make money from this kind of work and create content that actually converts. Because most of us are not thinking about the brand. Is the brand making money? As long as we get paid, we're not looking at, did I really send someone to the event? Did 2 people buy when I talked about this product? So we need to think about these people, because they're giving us their money. So there's still a lot that needs to go into this discussion. But thank you guys for having this. That was my submission. Thank you.
Okay, now guys, we've reached that point where we do have to start wrapping up. I've seen there's quite a bit of discussion going on in the chat group, which is a very healthy one. And I'm encouraging us to continue. This is just going to be the first of very many more. Of course, this is something that we cannot wrap up literally in one session. So there are going to be more. And God willing, all things remain the same. We will even have physical sessions. Now, as we wrap up, Emeka, I'm going to start with you. I think we can all agree that yes, Ugandan influencers have influence, but do you think it is fair for us then to tie output with influencing? So we, for example, say if I'm from UBL, I'm inviting Emeka to a gig, we have to sell. And if we don't sell, then you don't get paid. Your thoughts in your parting shot.
If you don't sell, you don't have to get paid. I have done my part. Why not pay me? Anyway, it has. It depends. It actually depends on the work. If you feel the influencer has not really done their work, if they've not done their work completely, then they don't deserve the pay. But if they have worked, honestly, Peter, if they have worked, they have done their best to sell the brand. Even if you've not made that much, you can actually, you can at least say, hey, we have not worked, but I might not be able to pay you the full amount. Let me give you something. Then maybe I will get your balance when the money comes. Not entirely saying that, hey, I cannot pay you. It actually depends on the agreement you people made. You get? Was it marketing? Was it a sales made? Was it what? Depends on the agreement you actually have with us. The agreement you have with the influencer. That's what I can say.
All right. Natasha, do you think that influencers need skin in the game so that, if if the campaign doesn't work, then hey, they don't get paid?
I think, yeah, you definitely 100%, 110%, because you could have, let's say, a YouTube channel and you've chosen just to be a content creator rather than a brand influencer. And sometimes you'll get, for something you've worked really hard on, you'll get 50 views compared to the 1,000 or 2,000 views that you're used to when you didn't even put that much heart into a project. So yeah, you do have to have a thick skin, because the client at the end of the day will want something that they feel happy with. So if they say no, go make changes and stuff like that, chin up, knees to chest, let's go. Let's do this again. Let's stand up, do this again, and create something that you'll know that has made an impact.
Okay. Carol, as we wrap up, do you think a payment should be tied to output?
Yes, absolutely. This is a heads up for for the influencers here in this industry. Clients have worked with you guys for a while now, a few years now. They're tired of the same old metrics where they can't sort of tie value back to some sort of monetary gain. And it's something we've seen even in EABL, especially with our team in Kenya and our team in Tanzania. They are evolving to paying for performance. So we literally sit down at the end of the month, look at the report and say, you know what, this person didn't deliver. And it's so serious such that it's even an audit query. Like internally, they will say, why was this person paid when they didn't deliver? So it's something to take very, very seriously. And it's something to work together towards as an industry to elevate the performance and to make sure the client is happy, but also the influencer is happy. But it's absolutely, we should tie payment to performance. And I like what Emeka said, you might not get 100%, but we do see your efforts. So you will get some of it. It should just be stipulated in your contract so that there are no legal issues around there.
Cool. So thanks for that. There's still a few questions and queries that have come up in the chat box. As UAA, we will get back to you. So mine is on behalf of UAA because unfortunately, our chairman, Frank, is not feeling too well, so he could not be able to make it for this. But he passes his love and his greeting and his thanks for the performance and also the energy. I first of all want to thank Carol, Natasha, and Emeka for making time to be here and for kickstarting this discussion. As I mentioned earlier, we cannot exhaust it all. It's a long discussion, but we've started it, and it's something that we need to have. At the end of the day, it's upon us to make our country better as Ugandans. And these are the steps that we start taking. Is our marketing getting better? Are we getting more professional? Are we understanding what we are supposed to do and what our outputs are? Whether it's from the influencer side, from the agency side, who's the go-between, and the client side. Because everybody at the end of the day is looking for value. The client wants value, that's why they're spending money. The agency wants value, because that's why they will have the client, because they're adding value. And the influencer also wants value, because that's why they are working. That's why they're putting it in. So it's about making sure that we all get value, but we also all have to give value, because you cannot receive what you do not give. So my name is Peter Igaga, and I have been your host this morning. I want to thank you for the great participation, the energy, and I want to ask us to keep on keeping on. And this is just the first of many to come. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Liz, to shut down the session for us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Liz from UAA. I appreciate everyone that has been able to attend and share the ideas and be part of the discussion. We'll be having more events from UAA, like we'll be letting you know. Please endeavor to always try and attend. Don't miss out. We always have the cool stuff. And also, I will try and share the webinar onto our website for those who want the detailed part of it. Thank you very much, Frank, our chairperson, for letting us have this. Peter, our host, and the speakers, thank you for being part of this. We appreciate. And all those who have been able to attend, see you again for the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Okay, cool. And have a great morning. Stay safe and God bless.